Hello and welcome everyone to the live stream. We are going to talk about 3i Atlas and what's happening effectively right now. As it's close to the sun, it performs a superior conjunction as viewed from Earth with the sun tomorrow, October 21st. That's a pretty big day. If we speak about the archetypal energies, anytime something performs a conjunction with the sun, especially superior conjunctions, which are seen as a little bit more powerful than inferior conjunctions, which are in front of the sun. Well, that's happening with this big bad boy tomorrow. And then on the 29th of October, we have the perihelion, the closest approach to the sun. And there's just a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about simply as a result of that. I do have another video planned on a very specific topic as it relates to 3i Atlas for the days ahead. So if you want to catch that, make sure you subscribe. I'm not going to go into in this video or else I'll spoil that one. But we have plenty of time. Tomorrow's the 21st, perihelion's the 29th. We are completely blind to it. We don't have any up-to-date imagery of 3i Atlas. The last photos that we got were from ESA, the European Space Agency, from the close flyby in October. We still have no images of 3i Atlas from NASA. We are still in a government shutdown in the United States. And contrary to a lot of AI YouTube channels, we do not have any imagery from China on 3i Atlas yet, or from the UAE. Those are all still totally offline. So there hasn't been any updates as it relates to imagery of 3i Atlas from anywhere, to the best of my knowledge. And of course, if you've been tracking my channel, you know that I've been tracking this like crazy and doing proper due diligence as well, being open-minded, being still a little skeptical, engaging in speculation. All these things are fine if we disclose and kind of put disclaimers around what we're talking about. Well, I haven't seen any sources for the Chinese imagery, NASA imagery, other than what we had from the rovers, which were like blurry. I mean, they're almost useless. Same with the ESA imagery was nearly useless, or the UAE. And I feel like I would know because with a certain amount of subscribers, you get emails flooding in the moment anything happens. Earthquake, solar flare. I get people messaging me all across different platforms, sending me stuff to look at. So I would know. So yeah, just the facts really in today's video. The next video on 3i Atlas will be a lot more speculative, but also a lot of fun. So yeah, it looks like the live stream is going well, and I see everyone in the chat. Hello and welcome. Thanks for being here on a Monday. And yeah, the silence from NASA is deafening. I mean, they are shut down because of the U.S. government shutdown, but I really don't feel like there's an excuse for it. You have to give it to the Europeans. They stepped up and they released what they had within just a few days, which is totally reasonable. It does a flyby on the 3rd. We don't expect to get the images if it takes some processing 6 hours later. Anyone that is that impatient needs to reevaluate themselves because patience is a virtue. But at this point though, we're getting quite behind. And the only new images that we're getting of 3i Atlas, one of which I showed in the last video I made on it, was released in August. So there have been some telescopes that collected imagery in August and they've been processing, they released that, but that's all the way back in August. It's October, folks. I'm back in the lumberjack long sleeve here. So yeah, we're moving along in the year and we would like to have those last images of 3i Atlas, especially from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, the HiRISE camera. A lot of people talking about how that should give us our highest resolution look at it. It has been used before to image other comets that were closer and they still came out quite blurry and grainy. So I'm not too like bullish, you could say, on the images from the Mars rover, rovers and orbiters at all being any good. And effectively ESA confirmed the position of 3i Atlas. It was still in the same location that we would expect. It hasn't done any orbital movements that we wouldn't expect. at least going back to October 3rd. It is now the 20th. So it has been, let's just say, 17 days. So during that time window, we are totally out of the blue. Another piece of misinformation, just want to make this clear, because a lot of people are like just so interested in 3i Atlas, but they don't know what to believe. There are some claims going around about 3i Atlas sending out these like periodic signals that match up with like Fibonacci numbers and everything. That's all bullshit. You won't be able to find any source for that. Plus also because of the glare of the sun, you're not going to get any imagery. You're not imagery or any like radio telescope. I mean, you should be able to get some radio signals if you put the arrays right on it, even if it's close to the sun, because it's, you know, the glare of the sun's different than a radio signal. But as far as I know, no one is tracking this thing 24/7 with large radio telescope arrays in hopes of detecting signals from that. Maybe we should be, but we're not. So anything you see out there as it relates to this thing sending out like pulses of radio waves and is communicating with us, that is also BS that then a lot of different AI channels are using to create more nonsense. So it's just a little side note on some of the problems right now that exist in YouTube land and on the internet. And it's really difficult for the average person who has a normal job or maybe 2-3 jobs and they have kids and they got more, like maybe they're homeless, right? There are so many problems in society to keep up with this. That is why I've taken on this task. This is my job, doing it for you all, and just relaying this as accurately as possible. We're going to start with our 3D solar system viewer, which many of you know. This is from the Sky Live, and it's linked in the video description. Here we see 3i Atlas. It is going quite quickly, about 60 kilometers per second, through the inner solar system. At perihelion, it'll be 68 kilometers per second. So actually right now, it's about 64 or so. I mean, I'm just kind of guesstimating, but when it was out near Jupiter, it clicked in around 60. At perihelion on the 29th, it'll be 68. Based off of its orbital trajectory and what we know about, you know, how things move through space and gravity and such. So it's about 64 kilometers per second right now, maybe 65, 66, somewhere in that zone, maybe even 67. 68 will be October 29th. Now we can go forward here. Here's our date. And let's go to the 29th of October, just like this. And let's zoom in. Okay. This is the perihelion. And specifically, we can go to, I think this is set for London time, which I believe is the same as Universal time, same time zone. So 11:55 a.m. on the 29th of October is perihelion. That is the most up-to-date value for perihelion, exactly the closest approach to the sun of 3i Atlas based off of all the orbital data that we gathered up to October 3rd. That value is not going to change now because we don't have any new data coming in. Simple as that. The actual perihelion may be a few minutes off of that, maybe even like up to 10, 20, 30 minutes, but it's probably pretty close to precise because we've tracked a lot of comets. We've, you know, calculated a lot of perihelions across, you know, many decades now. So this is perihelion. It's the closest approach to the sun, meaning that it is receiving the most amount of solar radiation during its entire journey. And very likely the most amount of solar radiation that is received in tens of thousands of years. And that it would be probably more like millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of years. It depends on the last time it was in a star system. Now, if 3i Atlas passed through a different star system by chance, which is super unlikely, like incredibly unlikely, but if it passed through a different star system by chance before hitting ours, well, the nearest one would be the Centauri system, and it didn't come from that direction. So, like, it's almost certainly like tens of millions of years minimum since 3i Atlas was last near a star. And in this instance, actually really close to a star, right? We have the sun right there, inner solar system. If we zoom out, we can look at some of our other planets that we know and love. For example, we have Neptune right here, blocked by the, let me just shift this over for you guys, okay? Neptune there is the outermost gas giant in our solar system. It's at about 30 astronomical units. Earth right here is at 1 astronomical unit. So 1 AU is the distance from the sun to the Earth. Neptune's at 30, Uranus is at 20, Saturn's at 10, Jupiter's at 5.2. Neptune is still very close to the sun in the context of interstellar space, right? You zoom out further, and this is how far you can zoom out on this app. But you zoom out super far, you're really dropping off in terms of solar radiation, because it follows an inverse square law, which means that if you double the distance, the strength goes down by 4. Another way of thinking about the inverse square law is if you get closer to something, if you have the distance, the strength goes up by 4. So either you go out 2, drops by 4, or you go out by 3, drops by 9, or the inverse, okay? So because it's spreading out like this, like a sphere, all solar radiation, which is light energy, these are photons, right? So this is visible light, this is infrared light, radio waves, gamma rays, all the stuff that the sun emits. Doesn't emit many gamma rays, almost never. Only the most powerful solar flares have been observed to produce gamma rays. But in general, the sun is pumping out just a whole bunch of light radiation like a sphere going out like this. So, and also before I get further, we are going to do a question and answer at the end of this quick broadcast, this update report. So if you have a question, then wait till then, type in the chat, keep it on topic, and if you attach a question to a super thanks and it's not totally insane, I will also answer it. So yeah, stick around for the Q&A. We'll just go over a whole bunch of things because I know a lot of you guys have questions. So I'll do my best to answer them. I'm not all-knowing, omnipotent, anything like that, but I'll do my best to answer your questions in a loving way. So 3i Atlas is extremely, extremely, extremely close to the sun right now. I did some calculations. The amount of solar radiation that's receiving, you can call this solar irradiance. The amount that's receiving is 735 watts per square meter. So 3i Atlas is receiving about it's receiving about 735 watts per square meter during its perihelion at 1.36 astronomical units. You'll notice that's closer to the sun than Mars, right? Mars has a eccentric orbit, most of the planets do. Venus is the only one that's almost a perfect circle. But Mars, its total solar irradiance that it receives day by day is typically about 586 watts per square meter. Earth, on the other hand, at 1 astronomical unit, closer to the Earth, is about 1,362 watts per square meter. We are in solar maximum, so that is a little higher. So it's about 1,364. So you can see how going from Mars, which in its orbit, let's say about 1.5 AU, just really rough average, 1.5, 1.6, right? That's 586 watts per square meter. Earth is 1,362. 3i Atlas at 1.36 astronomical units is calculated to be about 735 watts per square meter, okay? If we go back to our friend Neptune, okay, because we were talking about Neptune, 30 astronomical units, right? It is receiving 1.5 watts per square meter. So you can see how this scales. If you reach 30 astronomical units, you're coming in from deep space, you're at 30 astronomical units. Now you're receiving 1.5 watts per square meter of surface at that location. You get to Uranus, it goes up. You get to Saturn, get to Jupiter, it keeps going up. Jupiter's at 50. So once you reach 5.2 AU and you reach that orbit of Jupiter, you're receiving about 50 watts per square meter. And so the bigger an object too, the more energy it can collect. Keep that in mind. 3i Atlas is expected to be quite large. Some minimum estimates are 5 kilometers and some upper estimates are 50 kilometers in diameter, oblong shape. So that just means that it can receive more energy overall because it has a larger surface area. Also has this very large complex dusty plasma coma that is likely getting bigger and bigger at this moment in time. So 3i Atlas, as it's zooming in through the inner solar system into its perihelion, is getting bigger in terms of its coma, and it's getting faster. It's going to reach its peak velocity, 68 kilometers per second. And if there's anything associated with that, you know, any electrodynamic properties to it because of its complex dusty plasma coma, right? This is dust, gas, plasma. It's going to get stronger in its effect. So bigger, faster, stronger. Now, here's the thing. 3I Atlas at one point was not in the inner solar system. It is there right now, but if we go back, we see it zooming out like this, right? And let's go back to 2024 and 2025, and here's 2021. We can see it's out beyond the orbit of Pluto, which actually isn't that far out. So in fact, we've been working with the energy of 3I Atlas at like a consciousness level for a long time now, because there are a whole bunch of trans-Newtonian dwarf objects, things like Eris and Sedna, which are, you know, 1,200 kilometers in diameter, 1,500 kilometers in diameter. Eris is larger than Pluto. There's a whole bunch of TNOs in the zone going from the orbit of Pluto out to even 1,000 astronomical units. So 3I Atlas has been in our system for a while. If it was still traveling along this trajectory and at the speed of about 58 or 60 kilometers per second. We, of course, don't know its history until up to we spotted it. So maybe if it's like an alien craft or something, lowest possibility in my mind, but you can't rule it out. Maybe it accelerated and sped up, or maybe they have wormhole technology and just popped out and then boom, here they are. I mean, we don't know. But it's been in our field for a while. But deep space, deep space, where you're not near a star at all, right? You're basically equidistant to all the stars around you, or like you're not at all in the heliosphere of a star. You're nowhere near even like a Strongen sphere of radiation. You're just super far out there. That is estimated to be 10 to negative 7 to 10 to negative 8 watts per square meter in terms of solar irradiance. And that's coming in from cosmic background radiation and also just from extremely low energy light flux. It's at like the nanowatt per meter squared level. So that calculates out to 10 to negative 7, 10 to negative 8 watts per square meter. If you're just in interstellar space, far removed from any nearby star, that's where you are. To put that into context, you could basically say it's 0.0000001 watts per square meter. And that's the difference right now. Let's go back to our perihelion 2025. We see it zoom in, and we will go to October. Boom, just like that. So let's zoom in. Boom, shakalaka. It's about to go down. How do you guys like the new channel trailer? Thanks. Shout out to our moderator and really good chap, Secret Owl, for creating that. I thought that was pretty awesome. Okay, so here we have our perihelion once more. Again, here it's 735 watts per square meter. So we have gone up like 8, 9, 10, actually, we've gone up like 10 orders of magnitude in terms of total solar irradiance. So 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, like do the math. 10 times 10 basically. That is a huge amount of energy that 3I Atlas is now receiving. And if it has been traveling through deep interstellar space for tens of millions of years, minimum hundreds of millions of years, then how is it going to change? Is it going to undergo any sort of changes while we can't see it? Again, we have no idea what it's doing right now. Starting around November 2nd, ESA says their JUICE probe will start to observe 3I Atlas. That'll be right after perihelion. They're going to be fairly far away, but they're hoping to get some observations of this interstellar thing, object, craft, being, whatever, comet, you decide. But as of right now, we have no idea what's happening to it. Now, here's the other part of the story, okay? So we already know, just based off of where it is in the solar system and where the amount of solar radiation, or just light irradiance. We'll call it light irradiance because that's what it is. It's not from the sun, it's just from all stars. The amount of light irradiance from interstellar space, 10 to negative 7, 10 to negative 8 watts per square meter. Super low. Now it's about 735 watts per square meter, near and around perihelion, okay? We've also had a lot of solar activity. So check this out. This is our Earth-facing sunspots and solar flares going from October 11th to the 20th of this year. Look at how these sunspots have rapidly grown, okay? This is 4642. I believe those are the numbers, and then 4648. So we see some other sunspots behind, but in general, they haven't been undergoing the most flux. But you'll notice this is going to reset pretty soon. You'll notice that these grew very rapidly. Look at how our X-ray flux increased. So this is the most vibrational wavelength of light that the sun normally puts out. Okay, so there's a big change. And actually, before we go back to this, here we have a visualization of solar irradiance. Okay, and this is showing how it hits the Earth, but we have radio waves, far infrared, near infrared. So the entire radio microwave spectrum, and then we have the infrared spectrum, visible light, ultraviolet light, extreme ultraviolet light, X-rays, gamma rays. Most of them are absorbed into Earth's atmosphere. Some of them are able to make it down to the surface. But that's total solar irradiance. All the different parts of the light spectrum, smash all that together, take a power reading, that's what you get. Well, we are also seeing a tremendous amount of solar flares from these sunspots that grew. So look here, we see our X-ray flux increase by an order of magnitude. This is a log scale going from high B class levels up to M class levels and hovering in this like high C level. And here are these solar flares. You'll notice they're from these sunspot groups that have just rotated to the limb. Okay, so here we have the limb of the sun. Right there, this is the western limb solar coordinate system. This is facing Earth. So right here, boom, that's Earth facing, right? We're on the other side of the Earth, like that's towards the Earth, right? Towards you is the Earth. You are the Earth. And these solar flares just charge the Earth up to a great degree. 3i Atlas tomorrow, October 21st, or if you're watching it tomorrow, today, is exactly on the other side of the sun. Now, why is this blue? It's because this is a 131 angstrom view of the sun, and they color it so we can see these solar flares, okay? So it's just a very specific wavelength of light that allows us to see these solar flares very nicely. And they have a whole bunch of different views of the sun that see different features, and they make this one blue to make it differentiable from the different views of the sun, okay? So that's why it's blue. It's not because it's actually blue in this wavelength, it's just for ease of use. Right on the 21st, 3i Atlas is on the other side. It takes 7 days to go from Earth's center here to the limb. 7 days to go from the limb to the other side, exactly opposite the Earth. 7 days to go to the next limb, and then 7 days to go back to Earth's center. 28 days round trip. So we just had these rotate off. These two sunspots, as you see here, this one rotating off on the, I believe it's on the 19th, right there. This one rotating off today at the end of the day on the 20th. You see it rotate off right there. Boom, shakalaka. It's gone, okay? So when are these sunspots going to line up with 3i Atlas? That is the other factor at play, because in addition to just total solar irradiance from the sun going up 10 orders of magnitude or more as a result for 3i Atlas from its deep interstellar journey going out to the inner solar system, it's also being hit with a ton of the highest vibrational wavelengths of light that the sun puts out, which are X-ray, solar flares, and X-ray flux. So the calculation is that on the 25th to the 26th of October, these sunspots will be in line with 3i Atlas if they are still active. And that is going to add even more energy to 3i Atlas, effectively supercharging it. We don't know how that's going to result. Okay, so we can go back to go right back here, and let us go to the 25th and 26th of October. So we'll zoom over here, try to get this lined up nicely. Here we go. Okay. Well, actually, let's go back to the 21st of October. This is our superior conjunction with the sun right there. See that alignment? Okay. These sunspots rotated off on the 19th and on the 20th. So they're definitely not in line with 3i Atlas on the 21st. But as you go forward to the 27th, that is 7 days from the 20th. And actually the 26th will be 7 days from the 19th. So we are going to have those sunspots on that once opposite vector of the Earth on the 26th and on the 27th. You'll notice that 3i Atlas has moved very slightly in its orbit during that time frame. So we go back, right? Here's the 21st, and then we move forward, and the angle has changed just a little bit. So that effectively calculates out to the 25th and the 26th of October. And you can even add a day on each side of that. So the 24th to the 28th of October. Yeah, 24th to the 27th of October, you could say, is when 3i Atlas will be in view of those sunspots. And if they continue to be very active, then it's going to get even more radiation than it would otherwise. We can go back here to our Earth-facing solar activity. Look how even from the edge there, well, eventually these sunspots will get to the edge. Even from the edge, when they flared, we were receiving that radiation. So it's most effective right in that central zone. But even from the limb, watch this guy in particular, it's flaring like crazy. Even from the limb, that still has a straight vector to us because light travels in a straight line. It's not bent by magnetic fields. It creates the magnetic fields and the electric fields. And so the moment that's rotated to the far side of the sun, it does have alignment to 3i Atlas. So it's already receiving this wave of energy. Look how broad this is. This is nearly 2 weeks of data, right? From the 11th to the 20th. So it's already in this zone where we do have some very active sunspots that are increasing solar flux quite a lot in the X-ray range, which is the most highly vibrational. It basically absorbs in anything that it hits. And 3i Atlas is right there. We can look at our coronagraph and see that we've had some activity today. So here we have our coronagraph, and this shows us activity from the sun, either Earth-facing or from the far side, because we put this disk over the sun. It's an including disk, allows us to see the solar wind outflows, and this can be things launching from the far side or from the Earth-facing side. Look at what's been happening over here. Tons of activity from those sunspot groups, right? So they've been flaring still quite a lot, as you can see with our coronagraph, and that is not letting up. They have not cooled off at all. And in fact, we also do have another way of looking at this. We have our stereo head probe in space, which is ahead of Earth's orbit, which allows us to see what's happening once things have rotated off the limb. It gives us a view just like a little bit more ahead of that. So we already know what rotated off, but we can track it a little bit further out. So if I hit start here, you'll see these two sunspot groups. And this is set for the 19th to 20th, so the past 48 hours. You see that there's been a lot of activity from that sunspot group. The other one as well, tons of activity from them. So they haven't cooled off. Now we can't see them, but looking with our traditional SDO camera, but using stereo head, we see that there's still a ton of activity on those sunspot groups, and they're still pumping out a ton of radiation. So you also get, in addition to X-ray flux, you get solar radio bursts in like the megahertz and gigahertz spectrum. So it is very, very active. We have that happening right now. So how does that affect 3i Atlas? That is the big unknown. But it's going from deep, deep, deep interstellar space, where it's receiving almost no energy input from any of the stars around it or from the cosmic radiation background, to now being hammered with energy from the sun. Not only its normal energy output as it relates to light energy, photonic energy, just what we call radiation, but also from these sunspot groups, which just recently just developed out of nowhere, and now they're tracking across the far side, blasting 3i Atlas with a ton of X-ray flux. And perhaps on the 25th, 26th, that time window if they do a big flare and launch a coronal mass ejection, perhaps also a coronal mass ejection will hit 3i Atlas during its perihelion. It takes about 3 days or 4 days to go from the sun to where it is in orbit, which is around 1.4 astronomical units, again, within the orbit of Mars. So it could hit exactly during perihelion, right when it's at its closest, moving its fastest. How does that change the trajectory, perhaps, of 3i Atlas? These are all questions that we can ask. So this is what we do know. Even though we can't see 3i Atlas at this moment in time from Earth or from any of our space observatories, it's too dim to see with things like stereo ahead, the coronagraph, it's not showing up. Even though we don't have any good imagery of that, we're not tracking it as far as I'm aware with any other method, we can say that it is receiving the most solar radiation that it has in a very long time, and it's also being pelted by this X-ray flux. So really, really quite wild stuff. Now, there is a difference to point out here, which is 2I Borisov, which was the second interstellar object. This was a comet, but of interstellar origin that was picked up. We see its hyperbolic orbit here. This is back in 2019, okay? 2019, that's solar minimum. We were in a solar minimum phase during 2019. And you notice that Borisov here cut outside the orbit of Mars. So it was further away from the sun than 3i Atlas. It was also quite a bit smaller, and it occurred during solar minimum. Because if we look at our X-ray flux from solar minimum to solar maximum, we see that there is a dramatic increase in X-ray flux from solar min to solar max. Here we have solar minimum, actually July 2019. We see that we're down here 10 to the negative 8 watts per square meter as it relates to X-ray radiation. And then here we have July 2024. Things were very active, and this is 10 to the negative 5 or so. So that's a 1,000 times increase. We're in solar maximum right now. It may not be exactly 1,000 times more X-ray flux at this moment in time as compared to solar minimum, but it's certainly more than normal. So Borisov, the second interstellar object, which didn't do anything bizarre, as far as we know, it is currently, it was outside the orbit of Mars, it was further away, and it came in during solar minimum. So no surprise that it really didn't react with the sun in a significant way, okay? We do have Oumuamua though. Oumuamua is very odd. It performed a perihelion on the 9th of September, cutting within the orbit of Mercury. Now Oumuamua was not that big. It did not have a coma. It displayed non-gravitational acceleration when it left, even though it didn't have any sort of like dust or gas or plasma surrounding it as far as we know. But it did perihelion the end of solar cycle 24, the very end. September 9th, 2017, we had the biggest earthquake of 2017 one day before on the 8th of September. This is not universal time, so if it's universal time, on September 8th, one day before perihelion, when Oumuamua was super close to the sun, boom, Earth gets an 8.2 earthquake in Mexico, biggest of the year. And check out the Earth-facing solar activity that occurred during this time window of its perihelion transit. We had 2 double-digit X-class flares from the sun. There's the first one, and then that was on the 4th, around the 4th of September. That was the 7th of September. Then we get another big one right at the end, another double-digit X-class flare. These are big solar flares. Boom, shakalaka. You don't get those every day. And in fact, those are the strongest solar flares of solar cycle 24, a weak solar cycle, and by a significant margin. And it was also nearly solar minimum. It was like the very end of the descending phase, and yet right around this perihelion of Oumuamua, the first interstellar object ever picked up, we had the 2 biggest X-class flares of solar cycle 24 and the biggest earthquake on Earth for 2017, a magnitude 8.2. So there's weird things that happen n equals 1 with the Oumuamua. There's weird things that happen when things get close to the sun. Now, this is within the orbit of Mercury, but it's also much smaller than 3i Atlas. And again, if we go back to Borisov really swung in right during solar minimum. There was no chance, the sunspots were 0. And so just in general, things are quiet. It was further out, it was smaller. So that could explain that. It's all kind of explainable as a result of that. So we have this happening at this moment in time, and we don't know what's going to happen as a result of that, and we are not going to be able to observe it in real time until maybe late November, possibly early December. I think it'll probably be late November we start to get eyes on it, probably around Thanksgiving. ESA's JUICE will pick up 3i Atlas before then, but as far as I know, we're not going to be able to get that data from JUICE until next year. So I don't know how fast that's going to be, but it's going to take some time. And that's all we can say. We don't know what's going to happen with 3i Atlas, but if we do see this connection with solar activity and with earthquakes, then, well, maybe we are in for some big events in the near future, because perihelion is the 29th, which is right here. It's coming in. Now, it's also aligned along the ecliptic plane. This I've talked about quite a bit. See how it's so closely aligned with all the planets? It's being hit by the solar wind, right? Borisov also came in with this trajectory like that, right? So it's only in that most effective solar wind ecliptic plane zone very briefly. 3i Atlas has been traveling along and will be exactly on it in November. And yeah, so it's going to have those sunspots lined up with it right before perihelion. They are still very active. Everything's lining up. Everything's lining up. But that's really all we can say. Everything else at this point is speculation as to what is happening with 3i Atlas. But we do know it's receiving like 10 to the 10 times more energy than it right now than it was in deep interstellar space. So yeah, good timing with Halloween. The veil is thin. There's a whole bunch of interesting things happening with 3i Atlas. Now, before we get to our question and answer that I'll hold for you guys, I just want to let you all know that we are completely in stock with spirituality. This is on the Earth Evolution website. If you did not know, I have a holistic wellness website where I sell a variety of products that are meant to aid and assist you with your health, your wellness, your spiritual journey. Also, we're starting to add merch to the website. So we have the 3i Atlas Interstellar cotton long sleeve. This is super awesome. I love this shirt. It's great. You can see the front and the back right here. From small to double XL. Fits fantastic. It's good for the fall when it's cold if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. This is all USA only, by the way. But the spirituality is fantastic because we have Halloween coming up. So I'm mentioning it because if you want to get some before Halloween, then you should order now. Because Halloween is when the veil is thin, and spirituality is, as the name suggests, helps you to connect to your spiritual body, your higher spirit. And specifically, this is a dream tea that I formulated back in 2022. I was just on my own journey of enhancing my dreams, making them more vivid and lucid. Even had some precognition dreams when I first started playing around with this. And it's 4 ingredients. It's purple lotus flower. You can see them here on the package. Purple, see that guy? That's the purple lotus flower. Purple lotus flower, chamomile, passion flower, vine, and mugwort. All of them work together synergistically. And you'll definitely feel relaxed and calm and cool. But it should enhance your dreams if you drink that at night consistently for a while. So it's fantastic to have during this time of year when you have this easier connection to spirit. So this is available on the website at wildfreeorganic.com. And we just mixed up a huge batch today. So I'm holding this was just mixed up today. So wanted to let you all know that. And of course, you can check out the other things on the site as well. This is earthevolution.com/store. This is the latest merch that we have, the Cosmos Within t-shirt, which I really like. Has sacred geometry built in. It feels amazing to wear as a result. It's really good stuff. This is USA only. So let us get into our question and answer. Cinder Blocks for Tires asks, what day will 3i Atlas be visible again? As I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, that should be around late November. Maybe a little earlier, but probably late November, we'll start to be able to observe 3i Atlas again from Earth-based observatories. Does 3i Atlas have an effect on our sun from Valerian, the Mackey, solar flares, CMEs, etc.? Possibly. It's very possible. That is what I'm thinking is going to happen. especially now with those sunspots very active, going to be lined up at 3i Atlas in less than a week, but we'll have to wait and see. You could even say that maybe those sunspots are a result of 3i Atlas being nearby in our inner solar system, but you can't say that with any definitiveness. You could speculate on that, but it was striking how quickly they pushed out. Things have been quiet for a while. Lisa's asking, where does 3i Atlas come from, or where does the name come from? 3 is the third interstellar object observed. I is for interstellar, and Atlas is the name of the observatory that first picked it up. So if it had been picked up by some amateur, if it had been picked up by me, let's say I found this with the telescope, it'd be 3i Burns, because that's my last name. If it had been picked up by some other person with the last name is Smith, it'd be 3i Smith. If it had been picked up by an observatory, let's say like Gemini, then it'd be 3i Gemini. There's different observatory names and networks. Colorado Cat saying, I did a super chat asking if you think today's Amazon outage was caused by 3i Atlas. Who knows? I don't think so, because we didn't have any significant solar activity today, and how it would do that and why it would target Amazon, it just doesn't really speak to me. But I think we would need some sort of like effect of 3i Atlas influencing solar activity, then the solar flare causes an outage of technological services or Starlink or something like that. So I hope that answers your question, Colorado Cat. Non-player character, if it doesn't reappear to us when we calculated it to do so, does that confirm it's alien tech, or is there a natural explanation for why it stopped or slowed down? So yeah, that's the thing. It's receiving a ton of radiation right now. So that could affect maybe its orbit a little bit. It shouldn't if it's traveling at 68 kilometers per second, but we'll have to wait to see where it pops up. And if it does that's the thing. If it's a very minor change, like extremely minor, then it's probably some sort of like solar radiation effect causing like outgassing that change its trajectory in orbit, just like a minuscule amount. If it's doing a huge redirect, and it's like, whoa, this is like in a very different part of the sky now, that is almost certainly, that is basically an indication that it is some sort of alien technology or something bizarre. So yeah, that's why it's so important that we observe this thing, because this is effectively a test run of what could happen under a real scenario of like someone wanting to come in and colonize our solar system, right? It's not that possibility exists, and there's probably lots of star systems that have had that happen to them. So it's unlikely, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't just be like, oh, it's never going to happen. I think we should like really take this seriously. And Kathleen's asking, has Mars or Venus experienced any earthquakes or volcanoes? I don't know. That'd be interesting. That's the thing. If there is some sort of connection between this, the sun, the Earth, you'd imagine this is also connected to the other planets, influencing them. But I don't know. I would like to know. I think we should have a lot more probes out there. We should do, we should be putting a lot more money towards this. But that's just me. I think we should be spending a lot less money on fighter jets and bombs and putting a lot more cool stuff in space, because that's the future, not blowing each other up. But I digress. We have one of a mind saying 3i Atlas is currently moving through the astrological signs of Libra and Scorpio, which aligns with the traditional definition of via combusta, the burning way. Thought, timing. I've never heard of via combusta, but when I think of Libra, I think of balance. And it's not, astrological signs. Yeah, so not constellations. See, I'm really looking at the constellations because this is interstellar. So I really don't care about Western tropical astrology at all as it relates to 3i Atlas, because this is an interstellar object. So to track it based off of like the position of the seasons and the astrological signs, you can do so. I just don't think you're going to be as accurate if you're tracking it based off of the constellations and the actual size of them, and all 13, if Fucus included. So, yeah, I'll leave the Western tropical astrology astrological interpretations to the Western tropical astrology astrologers. And I've listened to quite a lot of them, and they're saying a lot of interesting stuff. But in my mind, just because it's interstellar, I'm tracking it on a more interstellar viewpoint. I think that's really the only way to do it with this sort of object. And our moderator, Soul Healing with Bree. Hello, Bree. Thank you for joining. She's saying, remember, guys, people have been shouting for the end times since 1999. Start to see the pattern of truth through the fears. Yes, exactly. So that is now being amplified with AI even more. So a lot of them using a lot of crazy claims, and I just saw this new Twitter profile that's like just constantly posting this location on Earth is going to have a huge earthquake, like major quake next 48 hours, and their timelines is filled with those predictions going back months. None of them came true because they're just shotgun approaching and hoping to like shock you into liking it or something. I don't even understand the psychology of it. If you're going to do a proper earthquake forecast, base it off of data, and hopefully you get a track record like we have on the channel, right? We have a good track record here. But these channels, these other groups, Twitter, whatever, they don't have good track records. Thomas Beddingfield, thank you for the super thanks. Thank you for your effort in mixing different perspectives of science into the Earth situations and your effort in teaching us to understand the human body and ways to be one with the universe. Thank you so much. Namaste. God bless. And this is not a stupid question from Etta, who says, one stupid question. With all our technology, why can't we see the other side of the sun? We do have a few probes that orbit around the sun, and sometimes they are on the other side, and we can see the other side. But it's not all the time. So the main one that I track, that we have access to in real time, is Solar Orbiter. And not too long ago, it was on the far side of the sun. But now, in fact, it's in front of the sun, Earth facing. So we can't use that to track the far side. And to keep, if you wanted to have a permanent presence of things on the far side of the sun, we'd have to have a whole bunch of things orbiting around, because you just need one to always somehow be there. Now that's a good question. Why don't we have like 40 probes in the inner solar system tracking the planets and the sun? I don't know. It costs a lot of money. Where's the funding come from? I think in the very near future, though, that is going to occur due to forces like SpaceX and there being a renewed interest in space exploration and the mad rush, the Wild West, to claim space in space. So I think that is going to happen fairly soon in time. But as of right now, it's a money limitation. It's also a technical, like a skilled interpretation. Dr. 6233 is asking, what do you think of the forward anti-tail of 3i Atlas? It's quite bizarre. I really don't know what to think of it. Clearly, there's some sort of like sublimation of material in front of 3i Atlas, or just, I think that really goes to show you the effect of solar radiation, right? Most comets are still in the zone where they're actually receiving a good amount of sunlight, whereas 3i Atlas, so far out there, 10 to -7, 10 to -8 watts per square meter, just coming in from like the cosmic background radiation and all the stars combined, which is like nano watts per square meter. It getting close to the solar system, it's probably really, especially push like in the direction of the sun receiving the most, is probably just like really off-gassing a whole bunch of stuff, and then that is creating dust and also creating plasma. I think that's probably the best explanation, but I don't know. Some people are talking about how it's like they have forward headlights. Well, you don't need headlights in space. Or that it's a signature of industry, possible, if it's some sort of alien technology. But I think it's probably just normal physics. And then Skeets is asking, why do comets go around the sun and never into it? Or do they? Yeah, a lot of comets actually do burn up in the sun. Most specifically, sun grazer comets will get very, very close. This is like 0.007 astronomical units, and then sometimes gravity pulls them in, and also sometimes they get so close that the sun just rips them apart. So yeah, there are plenty of comets that do fly into the sun. And sometimes if you look through the record, you'll see the comet fly in, and then you get like a burst of activity in that spot. So it's pretty interesting. Even though the sun's huge and the comet's tiny, seems to act like a domino effect, and the dominoes start to tip. That's what it seems. And Phoenix Risen is asking a question I've answered many times in my videos, which is, could 3i Atlas affect our human consciousness? And my personal belief is that yes, it already is. I think 3i Atlas is conscious being, just like everything in the universe has consciousness. I think 3i Atlas has a tremendous amount of consciousness, and it's already affecting the entire consciousness morphic field of our solar system and of us here on Earth. But this is highly speculative, and I mean, you can look at thousands of years of esoteric wisdom and knowledge and spiritual traditions for evidence of this, the Native American beliefs and more. But everyone has different belief systems. A lot of people are into science, and you could even call it scientism, where they've turned science into a religion. So here we just look at everything very openly. I think consciousness is everywhere. If you believe that and you start to like interact with other things, you quickly start to notice that consciousness is everywhere. So I've had my own personal experiences basically every single day confirming that fact. But this is just me, my thoughts, my opinions, my beliefs. We're going to wrap it up here. What's your opinion on 3i Atlas and the WOW signal? Well, the WOW signal came from effectively Sagittarius, the constellation Sagittarius. 3i Atlas was first observed in the constellation Sagittarius. They're fairly close together. You know, I've never heard the WOW signal. Like, maybe you can listen to it online. Someone's transcribed it, but it was just like a repeating sequence, like pulsing sequence that made the guy go, wow, back in 1977, which is why they call it the WOW signal. But no one's ever decoded it, right? It sounded like it has some rhythm and purpose and intelligence to it, but no one's been like, oh, we decoded the WOW signal and it said this. So keep that in mind. It's just a signal that was received which was highly anomalous, and then it was over in like 30 seconds, something like that. 3i Atlas came in from fairly close to that, and in 1977, let's see how far back we go here. We can check out our sky live, and we can look at 3i Atlas going back. I don't think it goes that far back. Yeah, so we get it going here to 2016. But you see that's effectively the same location, right? And looks like this is kind of getting a little funky here. There we go, something like that. Yeah. So it's not really changing if you go further back and then, well, you see the trajectory. So did this thing, that's the thing. Let's go back to when it shows up here. 2015, actually, let's go back. Yeah, so we can go like this. Oh, I guess it just disappears. Well, this is the orbit of Neptune right here to the sun. So that is 30 astronomical units, 60, 90, 120. It's like 130 AU in 2014. So 1977. So in 10 years, it did 140 astronomical units. And if we want to go back another 10 years, that would take us to 2004 as 280. And then we get 1994 and 1984, 1974. I mean, it's like 700 something astronomical units away. It's very far away, but still kind of close to the solar system. It's possible that it emitted the WOW signal, but we don't have any data on that. And it also was still like, you know, the calculator is like 9 degrees off from the WOW signal. That's still 9 degrees. So that's a pretty big deal. Like it's close, but it's not like right on. It's still 9 degrees off. So if it had, then that means it would have done some big remaneuver back after 1977. So yeah, tremendous amount of anomalies with 3i Atlas. A lot of them, like this WOW signal, 3i Atlas connection, that is speculation. So we can't parade that around as proof that this thing is bizarre. It's, you know, that's an interesting connection, but there's no, 100% we know that they're connected together. It's just a speculation. And I'll take one more actually from Lisa, which is asking, how do we know it's interstellar? Is that a fact or a theory? That is also technically a theory, because we first picked it up with our earliest observations. We had to go back and find it in some of our earlier plates, but we first picked it up in 2025, okay? Maybe they'll be able to find it back in 24, 23 with some all sky surveys, but effectively we've only been tracking this thing for not even like about half a year or so. So from the point that we first noticed it, that is all we can say what it's done since then. What it's done before that is all just really well-educated guesses. And it's almost certainly probably, if it is just zooming through space, that is probably what it's done. And I would, 99.999% chance or something like that. But technically, yeah, that is a theory. It's not a fact that we know is from interstellar space. If this is some sort of like technological probe, maybe there's some group hanging out at 5,000 astronomical units near like some asteroid cluster that we have no idea about, and they decided to send 3I Atlas our way, right? It's not a high probability, and you could speculate on it. You certainly shouldn't make a video claiming it as fact or anything, but this is the new reality we live in with space, where all these possibilities exist. We don't know. So yeah, that's a good question to end on, because we don't know if it's interstellar. Probably is. That's my base case. It just makes sense, but it's not fact. It's theory. And it's pretty solid, but again, it's not 100% confirmed. We only know what it's done since we first picked it up. And that can be said for any of the interstellar objects, interstellar objects that we picked up, anything, comets, whatever. We only can calculate, we only know what has happened once they arrive. Like Oumuamua, for example, if I remember correctly, we didn't pick up Oumuamua until after its perihelion. So we were able to trace its orbit backwards, but technically we just all of a sudden saw it show up in the inner solar system. So what it did before that? Probably this, but we can't say for sure. So yeah, that is it. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Again, if you want to pick up some products from the Earth Evolution website, you can do that. They are all in stock. And we just mix up a whole bunch of spirituality. So I would definitely recommend you pick some up before Halloween and drink a cup of this for a couple nights before and after Halloween and see where that takes you. It should be fun. I know I'll be doing that, and I'll keep you up to date on 3I Atlas. A big video coming up on 3I Atlas in the next few days. A very interesting speculation on what its purpose may be. So make sure you subscribe to the channel to catch that, enable notifications if you want to be there right when it hits, and then smash that like button, help this channel grow. Thank you all for your support. Wishing each and every single one of you well during this time period. Make sure you take care of yourself, treat yourself first, rest, relax, do what's needed to stay healthy and grounded. Go outside, do some grounding. There's a lot of crazy things happening. There's also a lot of crazy non-things that are happening where people are just making stuff up. So make sure you apply your critical thinking skills and don't just believe everything that you hear or listen to, including on this channel, right? Separate fact from fiction, separate what we know from speculation, enjoy what you do, and chase your passions down and have fun. These are all just my recommendations. So wishing you all well. Have a great one. I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks so much.